You are live.
Right. Good morning, Title I coordinators. Thanks for joining us for our February webinar. Before we get started, I think we've already done this, but everybody just make sure that you've got your microphones muted and your cameras turned off. That's up at the top right hand of the Teams window if you're joining us on Teams. That will just allow everybody to focus on the presentation. Of course, if you have any questions or comments, you can put those in the chat or use the raise hand feature. Or if you're watching on the media portal, you can send those to me in an email. That'll be at erin.sudduth@education.ky.gov. And of course, we do record all these webinars and we post them on our Title I Documents and Resources webpage, so you'll be able to access that as well. And this is one that I think is going to have some really useful information for schools. So I'm going to definitely recommend that once that recording is ready, maybe you send that out to your Title I building principals as well. Last month's webinar recording is, of course, available on that webpage that I just mentioned. Just a little recap if you weren't able to join us. Let's see, we had, of course, announcements and reminders about spending and monthly tasks, things like that. We had an announcement about the new Title I Part A for Districts online course that is in the Kentucky Learning Hub. And I saw that a number of you have already enrolled in that class and have started working through it. Remember that that is a great resource for both new and seasoned coordinators. And upon full completion, you do get 6 hours of ELA credit for that. So that is a really useful resource. Then our main topic during January was equitable services for private school students. We talked about who generates funds versus who's eligible for service, the difference between the intent to participate and the declaration of participation, which is always confusing because they sound just so similar, and then documenting that that notification has taken place. So be sure to check that out if you serve private schools, and even if you don't, because if there are any private schools, you know you do need to reach out to them annually. So that notification of the intent to participate is going to be useful information for you. So after our announcements and reminders today, we're going to focus on parent and family engagement events. Parent and family engagement, I've said it before, is always an area where we see findings during monitoring. So this is going to be a really useful one. We're going to talk about planning events and activities for parents and some guiding questions to keep in mind. We'll also touch on the subject of entertainment, some uses of funds, how you can document events, and then I've got a new KDE resource to share with you that hopefully will make all of those previous bullets a little bit easier. As far as announcements, all I have is the census poverty and hold harmless percentages. Those are ready to start planning for school year 26-27. Remember, these are all tentative numbers. They are subject to change. If you think there is an error with your numbers, like a statistical error with the geographic boundaries or something, you can contact the SAPI branch at the Census Bureau. That's not something that KDE can change for you, but the window to contact them ends on March 27th. So be sure to get that done before March 27th, and all the contact information is in that document as well. And remember, I feel like I can't say this enough, the numbers and percentages you're going to see on there, that comes from the Census Bureau and their formulas, and they get data from a bunch of different funding sources. It is not going to match free and reduced price lunch, direct certification. None of the numbers that you have or that KDE has can tell us what those census numbers are going to be, unfortunately. Right, looking at our obligation of 310M funds, just a little monthly reminder to make sure that we're spending funds in a timely fashion so that we can meet that 85% threshold by September 30th. So by the end of February, we're approaching that 50% mark. 45% or so should be obligated. If you're a little below or a little over that, that's okay. If you're significantly below that, I recommend checking in with your finance officer, seeing if any updates need to be made. Make sure that things have been charged to the correct project. That's a very easy thing to do, is to accidentally put that somewhere else. And September 30th sounds like it's a long way away, but it's going to be here before you know it. So we just want to make sure that we can avoid those carryover waiver requests if at all possible. And then we do still have 3 open projects right now for Title I. We've got FY 24, 25, and 26. The one with the most pressing deadline is, of course, going to be FY 24. The period of award did get extended for that, but it ends on June 30th. So all of the funds need to be spent or encumbered by June 30th. Our February newsletter is also available on the webpage. Of course, we had an announcement about those census poverty and hold harmless numbers that I just mentioned. We had a little reminder about GMAP cleanup, making sure that you've got your Title I application fully approved for any of those open years. And I know that our consultants have been reaching out with some reminders and check-ins for everybody who's maybe got a previous year's application just sort of floating out there, maybe still need some things to be addressed. So be sure that you check on that. I also had information about that district training course, an article on initiating contact with private and homeschool officials. Our principal's perspective focused on homeless funds awareness, making sure that all principals, Title I and non-Title I schools, know that the district does reserve those homeless funds and they're available to support students experiencing homelessness at Title I and non-Title I schools. And then we had our usual recurring articles as well. Remember, if you or anyone in the district is not currently receiving newsletters, just let me know and I'll get you added to the subscriber list. As for our year at a glance tasks for February, you should probably be thinking about planning with early childhood programs to plan that transition of preschool students into kindergartens at Title I schools. And then I've also just put some reminders about those ongoing tasks that we should be revisiting throughout the year. Timely spending of funds, checking on program implementation. As I was just saying, meeting with the finance officer, talking about GMAP and EERP alignment, ensuring that any open GMAP applications with issues get addressed and resubmitted to KDE. All right, we talk a lot about parent and family engagement in our webinars and newsletters, and as I just mentioned a minute ago, it is one of the most common areas where we see compliance findings during monitoring. And it's also an area where we get a lot of questions surrounding things like the allowability of purchases. So let's start with just a couple reminders. All these requirements are in section 1116 of ESSA. And all districts receiving Title I funds must conduct outreach to all parents and family members and implement programs, activities, and procedures for their involvement. Parent and family engagement is all about engaging parents and families in the school community and with their child's education. Schools should view parents as partners, both working to promote student success. As we've discussed in previous webinars, we've really shifted from doing things to parents to doing things with parents. And we want to make sure that we're always meeting that intent and purpose of Title I parent and family engagement. And that is to build capacity for involvement by fostering and increasing two-way communication between schools and parents, as well as providing parents with tools and strategies needed to help improve their child's academic achievement. So I've emphasized some of the phrases there in bold. And as we're talking about parent and family engagement, you're thinking about how you support your schools in meeting these requirements. Keep these things in mind. Building parent capacity, meaningful two-way communication, providing tools and strategies, and improving academic achievement. So districts that receive a Title I Part A allocation of over $500,000 are required to reserve at least 1% of the allocation for parent and family engagement. Now, districts can increase that reservation above 1% at their discretion. And our districts receiving less than $500,000 can reserve parent and family engagement funds, but they're not required to do so. So they can reserve the full 1%, less than 1%, more, it is up to them. However, all districts must meet the requirements of ESSA Section 1116, regardless of the reservation of funds. At least 90% of that required 1% reservation must be distributed to participating Title I schools, and we want to give priority to those high need schools. So notice that it says at least 90% of funds. Many of our districts distribute all 100% of parent and family engagement funds to participating schools. That kind of makes sense because typically all your supports and your events are taking place at the school level rather than the district. Now, some districts choose to split funds evenly across all participating schools. Others may use a per pupil amount that they have set. And some base the amounts on the school's grade level. Maybe elementaries get a little bit more, middle or high gets a little bit less. It just depends. So keep all of that in mind when you're setting up your budget in GMAP and EERP, whether you divide the funds up to the locations or keep it at the district. You want to be sure that you're somehow denoting that the funds are being spent at the schools. That's something that you want to be able to show us if you're selected for monitoring. And parents must be provided the opportunity to give some input on how parent and family engagement funds will be spent. Many schools use online surveys to obtain parent feedback, as well as coordination with organizations such as a PTO or a parent advisory council. Events and resources are the most common uses of PFE funds. And so we're going to focus on events for the rest of this presentation. Now, what makes something a Title I parent and family engagement event? So just because parents have been invited into the building, that does not automatically make something a Title I parent and family engagement event. Think about how you work with schools to plan the instructional activities supported with Title I funds. You should have that same approach with parent and family engagement. You want to determine what the needs are, design events that are tied to those needs. The event should align with the activities and supports that are outlined in the school's parent and family engagement policy. A somewhat common monitoring finding is that the school policy does not reference any of the activities or events that are going to be provided. They are supposed to be in there. There are lots of factors tied to student success, academic, behavioral, social, emotional, etc., that could serve as the focus of a parent and family engagement event. It doesn't always have to be math or literacy. We want to make sure that there is a direct connection between the focus of the event and the event activities. And remember that not every event has to be a school wide event. So, for example, if your second grade students are really struggling with reading, maybe a literacy event just for second grade students and their families would be appropriate. First time parents with an incoming kindergartner may benefit from their own event as they learn to navigate the school system for the first time. Or if you have a lot of relatives, such as grandparents, aunts and uncles, etc., or maybe foster parents who are raising children, those groups may need their own type of support, and that's okay. Remember that simply providing parents with some handouts, some books, etc., to take home and use on their own is not engagement. It has to be more than just giving them things. So consider the following guiding questions when you are planning events. Up first is, what need is being addressed? Do parents need tips on how to support their students in learning math, or are we just doing the same math event year after year? What will be shared with parents, and how's it going to build capacity? What skills or knowledge are the parents going to gain by attending this event? So, does the event provide parents with new knowledge or strengthen existing knowledge that is going to help them better support their child's education? And how will this event impact student success? What do we expect to improve if parents attend this event? Families having a fun night together is a great byproduct of a successful event, but there has to be more than that for it to meet Title I intent and be an allowable use of Title I funds. All right, let's talk about entertainment. So this comes from the Uniform Grant Guidance, and it states that costs of entertainment that includes amusement, diversion, and social activities, and any associated costs are unallowable unless they have a specific and direct programmatic purpose. Now, this doesn't mean that Title I events can't have elements of entertainment within them. What it does mean is that the sole or main focus of the event cannot be entertainment. So that's why I emphasize the phrase specific and direct programmatic purpose. The details of what will happen at the event can make all the difference. So always bring it back to those guiding questions that we saw on the previous slide. So let's discuss some examples that regularly come up during monitoring and application review. So up first, we have what I'm calling our do not proceed events. We've got award ceremonies, dances and parties, sporting events. These events do not have an academic connection, and they do not provide parents with information, tools, or strategies to build their capacity. And I'm putting these next examples in what I'm calling the more detail needed category, because at face value, they sound like entertainment, but depending on what happens at the event, they could be allowable. So up first, I have the movie night. If the movie can be directly tied to an identified need and it provides parents with tools to address those needs, it could be allowable. But if it's just watching a movie together, then that's going to be entertainment. Next is an arts and crafts night. If the event consists of solely the arts and craft activity, that's going to be considered entertainment. Now, if there is a craft component to a larger event tied directly to achievement, it could be allowable. For example, if the majority of a reading or literacy event is focused on teaching parents literacy techniques that they can use at home with their child when they read together, and maybe a small portion of the time includes something like a decorate a bookmark craft, that would be okay. Up next is student performance. This type of event would truly need to engage the parents and students together in the content, as opposed to parents just watching a student concert, a play, a Veterans Day program, etc. So for example, maybe the students demonstrate what they've been learning in their STEM class, uh, and then they work with their parents to do some STEM activities together after that little presentation or performance. And the last one I call snacks with students. We do reference these ones a lot. We've got muffins with moms, donuts with dads, grandparents' day, etc. So if the main purpose of the event is for the grown-up to come to school and eat with the student, that does not meet Title I Parent and Family Engagement Program intent. And you can absolutely work to incorporate Title I aligned activities into these events, but on their own, these are not going to be an allowable use of Title I Parent and Family Engagement funds. So using Title I funds to support parent and family engagement. Up first, of course, just like with our regular Title I funds, we want to make sure it meets those requirements of being reasonable, so not excessive in cost, allocable, aligned to the program intent, thinking back to those guiding questions, that's really going to help you with that, and then necessary, needed for program implementation. Some of the common expenditures that we see, it's not an exhaustive list. Of course, we do see food. Remember, we're talking about light snacks, materials for activities, maybe staff stipends for them to stay after and help facilitate the event. You can use funds to provide childcare and transportation for parents to help them get to these events, help eliminate those barriers for their attendance. And then I've got some items here that are never allowable with parent and family engagement funds. Up first, of course, is meals. We know light snacks only with food. Prizes and awards. An award ceremony is not a parent and family engagement event, so we shouldn't be paying for that. You can use a small, reasonable amount of funds from your school's regular Title I allocation to provide some low-cost awards, certificates, ribbons, etc., or things tied to academics like a bookmark or a pencil or something, but no trophies and medals and things like that. Decorations for your event is not allowable because those items are not necessary for the event to take place. Any sort of promotional material or what we might call swag, stuff with the school logo or mascot or whatever on it, that's not going to be allowable. T-shirts and things like that. And of course, take-home folders, agendas, and calendars. those are not meaningful two-way communication, so we don't want to see parent and family engagement funds going to those. Again, if a school wants to use a reasonable amount of their regular Title I funds to purchase, say, some take-home folders, that could be allowable, but we don't want to see parent and family engagement funds used for that purpose. Oh, and hey, I see I've got a question in the chat. Okay. You mentioned possible staff stipend for assisting after school with parent and family engagement activities. What would a reasonable cost for something like that look like? We have staff that want to do trainings for parents. I'm going to say that that is going to be up to the district's discretion. Maybe if we have some other people who are on the call who've done this before and could share. Me as a person who's not been like in HR or anything, I can't answer that for sure. Also, not sure if this affects retirement. Um, and then another question you said earlier, that parent and family engagement events do not always have to be just literacy and math. What are some other allowable focus areas for PFE events? They can be anything that's tied to the student achievement. And if you check out both the district and the school courses on the Learning Hub, I have one section in there that is all about thinking outside the box for parent and family engagement activities. But let me try to remember some of the examples I've put in there. Maybe we have something about mental health, social emotional well-being. A lot of kids deal with things like anxiety. Maybe the parents need help working with the kids to develop some, mindfulness activities, something they can do together at home, and then the kids can also do in school. We could see something like an internet safety course for parents. My go-to example in that is probably having the parents in one room learning about internet safety, and then maybe the kids are separate, especially if they're the younger elementary kids, either just doing a fun activity or maybe learning some more age-appropriate things about internet safety. For our older kids, maybe, going into middle school, we might have some events about, encouraging their independence, getting them used to not having somebody holding their hand, taking a little more responsibility for themselves. Um, for our older high school kids, we could maybe see like a FAFSA night where they're, working on those college applications and FAFSA and everything. Maybe some soft skills training that the parents could practice at home with their kids as they're interviewing for college or job or military or whatever. Maybe some more focus on some independent living, some budgeting, things like that. Um, okay. And okay, I think I just kind of gave the examples of events for high school. I'm pretty sure I have more in that video. They're just not coming to mind right away. Yeah, you could absolutely tie things to career pathways. That kind of goes back to the events not always having to be school-wide. You do want to make sure that you have opportunities for all the different groups. You wouldn't want to just do, one group, but you could do things like that. And yeah, we've got a comment, just get very locked into literacy and numeracy. I think a lot of people do, especially going from No Child Left Behind to ESSA. No Child Left Behind was reading and math, and now ESSA is more about well-rounded education. We've got a lot more possibilities out there. So when we think about documenting a parent and family engagement event, we need to keep the elements of compliance in mind. So what do we want our documentation to demonstrate? What you need to do is look at your documentation through the eyes of someone with no prior knowledge of the event, the school, the district, etc. For example, somebody from KDE who's conducting a monitoring visit. If I was to look solely at the items saved, would I be able to easily classify that event as a Title I parent and family engagement event? We want to make sure that all parents were invited to the event, whether that was a school-wide event or something for a more targeted group. We want to make sure that they heard about it. Was the information communicated through a variety of means? Did parents have enough time to plan to attend? Was the information shared in a language that parents can understand, whether that means translating into a language other than English or just that the wording is clear? You want to make sure that everybody understands what you have sent. We want to make sure that barriers to attendance are removed. And sometimes this could be, like I said a moment ago, offering transportation and childcare. But other times it may be something as simple as when the event is scheduled to occur. If all your PFE events are scheduled to start at 4 p.m., that could be a really big barrier for a number of parents who may still be at work. Barriers are often going to vary from school to school. And again, language could be a barrier for families to participate. So there may be some times that it could be beneficial to have an interpreter at a Title I family event. And then, of course, as we've been saying throughout today, we want to make sure the event is aligned to Title I. We need to document what actually happened at the event in order to make this connection. And a lot of times, just a pretty flyer by itself is not going to do the trick here. From the standpoint of the reviewer, there have been times when I've seen the title of an event and I have been skeptical. So when I first hear something like Winter Wonderland Night, my mind is immediately going to go to a social event, and we've got pictures with Santa, decorating stockings, and drinking hot chocolate, all of that. But it's possible that meaningful information was shared with parents and the event happened to have a fun seasonal theme. On the flip side of that, someone could refer to something as a literacy night, but if all they did was hand out a book to everybody who showed up, that no longer meets program intent. We also want to look at how the funds are spent and make sure we document that. If you're using program funds, you want to make sure there's a clear connection between the event and the purchases. So on the right side here, we've got some of the most common pieces of documentation we see surrounding parent and family engagement events. Now, that does not mean that you must save each one of these items for every single event or that these are the only things you should save. So again, let's remember to look through that lens of an outsider who's unfamiliar with the district or school. First up, we've got our invitations, social media posts, flyers, emails, etc. This helps demonstrate that parents were invited to the event. We should see that these items were sent out early enough to allow parents to plan to attend and send out through a variety of means. We've said it before, not all parents are on social media, so just having a Facebook post or something, you're not going to reach the entire parent population. Next is detailed agendas and minutes. Now, every event may not have an agenda, and unless it's a meeting, there's probably not going to be any minutes for it. But for something like the annual Title I meeting, it can be helpful to see a schedule of what happened at the meeting, provided there's enough detail. The same goes for a parent conference agenda. If we are looking for compliance regarding that elementary school discussion of the compact, in relation to an individual student's progress, an agenda that just says Title I compact isn't really going to tell us what happened. It doesn't tell me how the compact was discussed. Now, an agenda with review Title I compact and discuss its impact on the student's achievement, that does tell me how it was discussed, and I can confirm that it meets the requirement. We also want to document any information that was shared with parents. So if parents were shown something or given something, what was it? Was there a PowerPoint shared at the annual meeting? Remember, we do have a template available on the KDE webpage that your schools can customize to help ensure they've got all the information in that annual meeting PowerPoint. Did they get a handout on at-home reading strategies as part of the literacy night? Those types of documentation really help paint a better picture of the event. And sign-in sheets. So I've put a little asterisk by this one because they are a very common piece of documentation, but the truth is that they aren't always useful. A sign-in sheet by itself doesn't tell me what happened at the event. It just tells me who was there, how many people were there. And remember when Pritchard Committee joined us a few months ago, we talked about how high attendance isn't always the mark of a successful event. Another thing to keep in mind with sign-in sheets is that they often contain personally identifiable information. A lot of times we see a place for the parent to sign in and then space to write the child's name. Um, and that student name is PII. So if you're selected for monitoring and you want to upload sign-in sheets as documentation, be sure to redact that PII, but also consider what compliance component you're trying to address with the sign-in sheet and if it's even necessary. You may have everything you need in some of those other methods of documentation I listed, and a sign-in sheet doesn't really add anything to it. All right, I've got another question. Clarification on prizes. Are family engagement door prizes allowed? Example, whoops, sorry, I've got another question that just made it move up. Okay. Parents attending a workshop or completing a certain number of tasks with their child at an event are then eligible for a larger learning prize packet that has additional supplies and learning tools to have at home. That does make sense. That would not be allowable. Any sort of door prizes or anything are not going to be allowable. Um, and then, can title funds be used to support family engagement events specifically geared towards early childhood, birth to age 5, and kindergarten readiness? Kindergarten readiness, definitely. With birth to age 5, I would tell you to kind of exercise a lot of caution with that, because if we think about who is generating the Title I funds and who they're supposed to be focused on, that's going to be our K-12 students. So I could see maybe a very small reasonable amount depending on the activity, but we wouldn't want to devote a lot of the funds to that because those are not the kids who generated the funds. All right, we're getting a lot of great questions today. So I've created a new resource and I've called it the Parent and Family Engagement Event Summary. And it is already available on our Title I Documents and Resources webpage. And just like any of our Title I resource templates, districts and schools are not required to use this form. Some of you may already have something similar in place, but if not, feel free to use this one or use it as a starting point to develop your own. The document is a fillable form and it's designed to help ensure that Title I parent and family engagement events and any associated purchases meet program requirements. The completed form could also serve as a piece of event documentation in and of itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at the form itself. I'm going to stop sharing so I can move over to a new screen. Okay, that's my calendar. We don't want that. So just to kind of show you where it is on our webpage, it's on our Title I Documents and Resources webpage. And down here near the bottom is our Parent and Family Engagement Resources, and it is the very last one there. Also, there's links to those Learning Hub courses that I've been plugging throughout this webinar. Right, so this is what the document looks like. I tried to keep it pretty basic, but as I said, you could further customize it to meet your needs. And my thought process behind this resource was creating something that a principal or another school level point of contact who's interested in hosting a Title I event could fill out and submit to the district for approval. This would provide the coordinator with some oversight to help ensure that the event meets program intent and that PFE funds are being used appropriately. So you could create a document like this, or maybe something in an online form, a Google form or something, whatever works for you. So up first in this first section, we've just got some basic information about the event. We've got the name of the school, the points of contact for the event, the name of the event, and the date and time that it's taking place. And then we also have the intended participants. And by intended participants, I mean, is it a school-wide event or is it something more targeted? Let's see. Then there is space to provide a summary of the event. Now, this doesn't have to be super detailed, just a brief rundown of what is going to happen at the event. And the rest of the form is to help make sure that it's connected to Title I Part A. Scroll down a little bit here. And just for quick reference, I have included the intent and purpose of Title I parent and family engagement and a couple reminders about events and uses of funds. Let's move to the questions. So up first, we've got, how does the event meet the intent and purpose of Title I Part A parent and family engagement? So how does this event build parent capacity, provide parents with tools and strategies, and increase two-way communication? How will the school remove barriers to event attendance? Is the event being offered at a convenient time and location? Will transportation or childcare be provided? Remember, you're not required to always provide all of those things. Those are just some examples of some of the potential ways to address barriers. And I added this because sometimes during monitoring, we do see events with low turnout. And of course, that's very disheartening for schools and districts. And they want some help thinking of maybe why people aren't showing up. And identifying those barriers can be really helpful for that. How will parents be notified about the event? Again, this is something that comes up a lot during monitoring. As I said, making sure we don't use just a single method of notification, and we give parents ample time to plan to attend the event. Then, will Title I Parent Family Engagement funds be used to support the event? And here we have click on it, we have a little yes, no drop down box, as well as space for them to list an approximate cost if applicable. If funds are being used, then there's also space for the school to provide a summary of what they plan to purchase. And this is just going to allow the district to ensure the purchases are allowable, align with the event, and meet those reasonable, allocable, and necessary requirements. And the last question for the school to fill out is, what type of documentation will be saved in addition to this event summary to demonstrate that the event occurred and met parent and family engagement requirements? Again, this is based on what we see during monitoring. Sometimes we don't see a lot of documentation that's been provided to us, but when we get to the school, they're able to tell us all about this event. So this document itself is going to help them with that, but also help them think about other things that they could be saving to show that the event took place and that it was meaningful and tied to the program. And then finally, there is space at the bottom for coordinator feedback. This is where you as the district coordinator can indicate whether the event is approved or maybe it's not allowable, as well as provide feedback regarding any of the event specifics. Maybe the event itself is fine, but they have a couple purchases that would not be allowable and they need to remove those. I will also say that, of course, this document is Title I Part A specific, but it could very easily be modified to fit other programs that have parent and family engagement requirements. I know we've got some KDE staff on the call from some of our other title programs like Title III, Title IV, Title V. Those all can potentially have family engagement components to them, so you could do something very similar to this for those as well. All right, and we'll hop back over to our slides here, and I see, okay, another question. Is there a recommended number of events a Title I school should hold each year? ESSA doesn't have like a required minimum or maximum or anything like that. Of course, you have to have the Title I annual meeting at the school. I would highly recommend more than just one event. Some do one a semester, some do maybe two a semester. It really depends, but no, there's no set number, magic number or anything like that. All right, so that is going to wrap us up today. So before we log off, if anybody's got any more questions, you want to put those in the chat and I'll look over on email and see if there's any there. Okay, I don't think I see any on the email. Nope, okay. And of course, if you think of questions afterwards, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to your Title I consultant. Yes, Jason, I can stay in here after this is over. What kind of giveaways are allowable? Does it have to be something that every family can go home with? I think we really need to focus on materials that are going to help them at home, in which case I would want everybody who attended to benefit from the event and get some sort of resource. Now, if you're purchasing something with funds other than Title I, same as like having a meal at a parent family engagement event, as long as you haven't used Title I funds for that, that is good to go. These are all really good questions. All right, so our next webinar is going to be on Thursday, March 26th. And just a couple reminders, of course, I do want to hear your feedback about what you want to see in webinars and newsletters and resources. So if you want to submit any feedback anonymously about webinars, you can do that with our webinar feedback survey. Of course, you can send those directly to me or your consultant as well. I didn't receive any specific topic requests after the January webinar. All right, doesn't look like we've gotten any new questions. But if some come through that I think everybody would benefit from, I'll make sure to just send that out in an email to everyone. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you in March.